I know, but I'm asking if Scott could. Okay. Now we just have to wait till 6.
5 seconds.
I'm working on it, I'm working on it. Jeez. All right, now it is 6, okay. All right, good evening, am I on? Hello?
What?
You get the message.
No, the light's on, but
all right.
testing, 1, 2, 3.
We got it.
Someone want to give,
Oh,
now I'm
upside
on.
down.
There we go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I was going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda for the budget meeting of February 27th, 2023, but we did notice that we only have one open forum. So if we'd like to include 2, the way we normally do, then I just need a motion to amend the agenda, please. Eric and Jim.
I would like to motion that we amend the agenda to include the second open forum.
Okay. A second, please.
Jim.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Now, I don't need a motion to approve the revised, correct? Do I?
I don't know.
No.
I think so.
Do I?
Yeah.
Okay, then I need a motion to approve the revised agenda with the 2 open forums, please.
Eric? Jay.
Any discussion? All in, stop laughing. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. So now we will take, and before we go into the presentations, and I would like to mention that we will have an open forum. And the 30-minute open forum is the time the board sets aside to hear in-person comments from the public. Comments may also be emailed in advance of the meeting prior to 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting, and state in the email that you would like your correspondence read out loud to Daphne Pearson, District Clerk at pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. This is an opportunity for residents to voice general concerns and compliments, especially about items on the agenda. However, this is not the time to register complaints about specific individuals or about items that should be addressed confidentially through the proper channels, typically with the principal or superintendents of schools as appropriate. All comments shall be addressed to the district clerk and shall be limited to no more than 5 minutes per board policy 2180. Please note that members of the board may not be able to directly respond to citizens' concern during the public open forum. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Do we have any emails?
No.
Okay. And with that, I would like to move us to our presentations, and tonight we're going to discuss the program component. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Bennett and to Janet, and take it away. Thank you.
Okay. Todd?
I just need you to start the slides. Okay. Good evening. Tonight we're going to, no, it's working. Hello? Mike's not working. Is this, oh yeah.
Yes.
So tonight we're going to go over the program component of the budget that we're building. Right now, before the administrators share their building level numbers, I will do a quick review of the 22-23 approved budget, the rollover budget that was reviewed with the board in January, and the status of where we currently stand as we work on the 23-24 budget. So for the budget that we are in right now, the 22-23 budget, we're at $33 million.
I'm on.
We are at $33,697,442. For the rollover budget for the 23-24 rollover budget, we're at $34,767,667. It's a 3.919% increase from the budget that we're in now. For the preliminary budget that we have right now today, the 23-24, we're at $34,469,126. That is a 2.29% increase from the budget that we're in right now, or a decrease of 0.9% from the rollover budget.
All right, so the difference between where we were with,
Yeah, I don't think it's on.
not working? Maybe I just gotta get closer. Okay. So the difference in what we presented at the rollover budget to now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the adjustments that we've made since the January 9th meeting. First is the BOCE services expenses. We now have a better understanding of what those numbers look like in regards to the different programs that we are currently contracted for, and that looks like it overall is about a 3% increase in, or a 3% increase in our actual rates and expenses for the 23-24 school year. We're also just waiting on a couple of cross contracts that we have with different BOCES through Questar. They're a little later in coming in, but we don't anticipate that number changing all that much. So some of the things that we really started to take a look at is in this initial budget, when we talk about where we're at now, is taking some of the things that we've heard from our supervisors, our building administrators, some of the asks from the Board of Education. So we rolled that into this budget. So the first one up is this, assigning assistant coaches. We know that we had a parent as part of a conversation at a board meeting asking about that. We've had, even before that, some preliminary discussions about having assistant coaches across all varsity levels. So when we take a look at that and looking at the current stipends for that, that would be an increase of about $9,905 to our budget. We also know that there has been a request and some promises made with the opening of the facilities, the fitness facilities downstairs, and making that available to the public. So what we're taking a look at is if we open that up for 2 days a week at 2 hours a day for the year, it'd be just over $8,000 in addition to the budget that we didn't have last year. Also, talking about adding another sport, we looked at bowling. One of the things that we want to make sure that we are doing is offering a variety of different sports to different students who may not participate in some of the more traditional sports. Bowling has gained in popularity, especially within the Patroon Conference. So taking a look at adding bowling at almost $1,200 or $12,000 for the addition of the bowling team. Another thing that we want to take a look at is years ago we had a reduction in force with some of our clerical work. So we really put our heads together and took a look at and working with the building administration in regards to what potentially that could mean for our budget and taking a look at where the need is. And so we were looking at 3 positions, moving them from the 10-month to 25 days to 12-month employees. That will cost the district about $36,000 to add those positions to make them full 12 months once again. We also took a look at adding some additional support to middle school, high school, in and around the lunchroom and monitoring. This was really primarily to address some of the issues that we have seen the middle school, high school adding up to 3 hours a day to help. And that's going to be about $12,000, just over $12,000 to increase the budget for that. The elementary school, we're looking to add a position. Again, what we're looking to do is really provide, we know that there's been a lot of issues with kids coming in, back, coming into school with more trauma. I think Pete's been working hard with the PPS team down there to work with some of the students who really have come in and have needed more support. So looking at increasing hours across different grade levels at the younger ages to the equivalent of about 6 hours or one person is about $23,600 to add to that. So the other thing that we're taking a look at is, as you know, we're at $420,000 for the dust collector, reducing that for the next year's budget by about $190,000 to adding $230,000. One of the things that we recognize is that the current dust collecting system, when it went out, bids all came in over the 420 in which we were prepared to spend. So we were taking a look at moving back some of those jobs that were part of the bid, concrete work, fence, and having Rich and our guys do some of that. So having some monies available to do some of those things. With all that said, we will be meeting on Thursday, I believe, with SEI, the engineer. Jim's going to join us for a conversation in and around the design of that workstation. So again, this is just to kind of give us some an opportunity to have some monies available, but not at the same level that we had budgeted this year for it, taking some of that money out. We also recognize we've got some retirements. Again, if you remember correctly, when we go into our budgeting and take a look at the potential of 5 retirees every year to kind of give us that spot of where do we begin our budget. This year we have 3 with a breakage of about $150,000 on retirement. But with that said, we also have the retirement of our business official. And one of the things that we've taken a look at with that is that we understand that this position is awfully important to us, and having someone who's got the certification as a school business leader, we've factored in a little additional money in the budget for that at a tune of about $24,000. So the last piece is the health insurance. So we start with health insurance. Initially came back a little higher than we had anticipated. We anticipated 10%, it came back in at 13%. But we're seeing a significant savings with prescription, and our different units have agreed to go with a prescription plan with Prudent RX that will lower our insurance considerably, down to about 3.7%, lower than what we had originally thought. So we'll see a little bit of a decrease in the health insurance there.
Mike, a couple questions.
Okay.
On the health insurance, approximately how much is that in terms of dollars?
Don't have that, I just got the percentages.
That's fine. The real question is, if I'm understanding correctly, from rollover to preliminary budget, there's a decrease of a little over $300,000. And if you want to understand where that decrease is coming from, the update is mostly increases, small increases, but just what was the driver of where did the decrease come from?
The prescription plan, the Prudent RX, is considerably less than what our past prescription plans were.
Jay, if you look at the preliminary budget, it compares the approved budget with the rollover budget with the budget that we have now. And you can see that when we did the rollover budget, the health insurance went up $423,000. And then with the Prudent RX and with the savings, so that changed, reduced it to $187,000. So now that it's $235,000 increase for health insurance and prescription.
Okay, great. Thank you, Janet. And sorry, indulge me. I am sorry that the last meeting I totally spaced that your retirement was on the personnel agenda. Sorry I didn't acknowledge it, but thank you for everything that you've done. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
And from the sublime to mundane, one more question for Mike. It's kind of tangential to this. I understand for funding for a sport team or a club, we have to approve the funding. I don't remember that we've talked about it, whether we have to actually approve the addition of a team or club. Could you just remind me of how that works?
Yes, because there is a financial piece to this, there will need to be an approval for that addition of the bowling team.
Right, but if it were no cost, if kids had to bring their own bowling balls and pins, for example, or whatever it might
Got
be,
their own.
no cost involved, it just, the decision to add the team in the first instance or add a club in the first instance is just the administration's discretion, and we're involved if there's money?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so this slide shows you in the order of the presentation from the rest of the group. So now I will turn it over to Todd.
Good evening. So my slide here is the district goals. We include this in our budget presentation because as we have conversations about putting the budget together, and certainly when we have conversations here with the board, we just like to refresh our memory of what the district goals are and make sure we're grounding our conversations about budget in the district goals. So my way of always remembering the district goals: curriculum, culture, and community. The full statements are there, but just keeping that as a foundation to the work we do with budget.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, everybody. We're taking a look at our district enrollment numbers. And what we are presenting is our current enrollment alongside our proposed enrollment for the 23-24 school year. The numbers in the current column, that's a snapshot of our enrollment that was taken on Beds Day, which occurs in October. And that's an opportunity, among other things, to gather our current enrollment figures. The figures in the proposed 23-24 column are anticipated figures for next year, and those are based on our numbers at the end of January. So as you can see, we are anticipating to remain relatively consistent from year to year. On this page, you'll also see our homeschool population projections, and we're looking at having a small decrease of school population, and that is based on analysis of our current homeschool families, outgoing students, and typical incoming numbers that we see based on historical trends.
Excuse me, just a quick question. On the special education numbers, I see we're going up just a little.
Sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Vincent's just about to jump on that.
Sorry, Brooke.
No worries, that's okay. I was just grabbing the microphone. So this snapshot of the increase in special education students was taken from our BEDS code. So that was back in October. That number, I mean, I don't have the exact increase from there, but it is growing. We have a number of incoming kindergarten students coming in, as well as new students that have moved into the district. So here just shows an increase of 9 students. Like I said, that was a snapshot of October from our BEDS data.
Sorry, I jumped to them before. I was just curious, I don't remember from past years, going back, say, 5 years, if you happen to know, what's the range we normally see? Is it usually, do we usually have around 212 to 220? Or has there been more variance?
Yeah, we're usually in the 200 range. I mean, there was a year or two, and this is off the top of my head, that we dipped down into like 180, 90 in that area, but we've been holding pretty steady around the 200 mark. But we are seeing a significant increase in preschoolers with disabilities and receiving services at the kindergarten level. So once I have all of those numbers in through our annual review process, I can give you a more accurate number. But for right now, this was all based on our October BEDS data.
Okay.
The athletic participation numbers you see there, this year 489, and then there's also estimated for the spring, and those numbers are coming out right now with kids signing up. And then for next year, we estimated again, they anticipated around 483.
So for technology, our goals continue to be the ones on the slide there. It's really providing adequate, equal tools in all of the classrooms, technology-wise, and our continued move toward cloud-based environments to have better usability and access for teachers and for students when they're at home. We also still look at the long-range purchasing plan to provide equal access for all students, UPK all the way up to 12th grade with their devices. That is the long-range purchasing plan really is the one largest driver of the technology budget. You'll see that long-range plan listed on the next page. The two black lines in the middle, for the 23-24 column, that's our current plan for next year. This is the year that we're on an off cycle for purchasing student devices, so we won't purchase any student devices next year, but we will replace all of the faculty and staff laptops. And you'll see that green line way at the bottom that says yes/HS. That's the 23-24 technology purchase. We'll look to be buying 170 laptops for complete replacement for all staff laptops. So that's where that falls in the plan. And then the slide after that, you'll see this is the dollars that are behind it. There is an increase. This was supposed to be a year where we were flat in our purchasing plan. But as we're seeing in all the different areas of the budget, technology is not immune to increases. We are having to raise that by about $15,000 to cover the purchase of those laptops. So you'll see that in the same 24-25. That should be 23-24. I don't know why that's the wrong header on that, but that's the right column, and those are the right numbers that drives that faculty laptop purchase. Overall, on the last slide, you'll see that we do most of our purchasing is through BOCES, and we do that by design to get as much state aid back on that as we can. That includes all of our device purchases. So you'll see that number is the largest increase. We are also, a number of services have gone up in price, and we are changing our student management system. All of those three drive that $49,000 increase that you see at the bottom. The rest of the increases are due to increase in supplies or contract costs. Any questions I can answer? Okay, who's next here?
All right, excellent. So we continue to maintain a high level of standard for our students with disabilities. And you'll notice in this code, there is a decrease, and that decrease in the tuition area happens to be because we have had students who are aging out. So students who reach the age of 21 and no longer require our support, we say they age out. So therefore, that's why you see the decrease of that 14.16%.
In terms of equipment requests for the upcoming school year K-12, one of the things that we do ask of our teams and departments is to make sure that they provide us with their requests and needs, and kind of what are more needs in terms of maybe a safety issue type thing versus needs of just, again, trying to improve the program. Some of those discussions we'll end up talking about, can we space some things out over a couple of years, kind of create a cycle. One of the things you'll notice though for this year though is a decrease quite a bit here in the equipment request, and the reason for that is because we ask if anything equipment-wise is over $1,000, if they provide quotes for us. Anything that's under $1,000, we would include in supplies. So some of the equipment that came in that we might think is typical equipment is in the anywhere range from like, $500, $600, $700, and that's why you'll see a little bit more of an increase in our supplies for this upcoming year, and then the decrease here with equipment needs. And some of the things they're looking at typically each year in terms of equipment requests of some of the money that is there is to replace some of the different musical instruments at the elementary, middle, and high school. And because we have instruments that stay here all the time, and again, they try to cycle through and replace things as they start to wear out and can't be repaired anymore.
I have a question, but it's actually on People Personnel Services. It's Monday, so I'm not thinking quickly enough to keep up with you, Brian. The question is, I see a sizable decrease, right, in the cost, but we have 9 more students. Just explain how that.
Right, so
shakes out.
this decrease is, if you look, it's for tuition paid students. So that means a student that we're paying tuition for them to attend a private special ed program. So those students or student has aged out, so therefore we no longer need that private placement. So that's where the decrease comes from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Up again. Here we go. So with contractual requests, when you look at the contractual request, you'll see there was a little bit of a decrease at the high school level. That is because of the project, Lead the Way project that we're not using anymore. Kind of replacing that, what we have is we do though now have our own tech pathway. So there was a little bit of decrease there. Contractual services usually overall, if you look at through things there, it relates to like either our IP program, ag conference money, graduation. Some of it is more assemblies, student assemblies. So those are some of the contractual things in terms of when you look at those totals that are proposed for the upcoming school year.
And then for the PPS, the increase there is due to our Aperture, that's our social emotional learning program, that software that I had spoken about on our Saturday workshop.
As far as materials and supplies, the elementary school and middle school and high school are, all the numbers are presented before you. And as Mr. Reeves said, that there was some decreases in the equipment codes. Actually, some of those adjustments are reflected in that there are some increases then on the supply codes. So for example, if teachers are choosing not to purchase an item that's over $1,000, but an item that's $800, that purchase now switches goes from an equipment need to a supply need. And so there's a couple factors here. One, there are some choices like that reflected in this plan. Two, there are some areas where, as building principals, we allocated some more money per teachers because we've seen the cost of items go up. So when we conduct our standard supply order or additional orders through the summer and into this beginning of the school year for students to use all year long, some of those items are just costing us more money, so we've tried to plan for those increases as we go. Another thing is, I gave the example of, for example, in the middle school, they would like to buy a clay wedging table. That table is an expensive item, but it costs under $1,000, and so therefore that gets included in this set of codes versus the equipment code where it would normally fall.
Hold on. Janet, a question on supplies. On the slide, and then I was trying to look into supporting documents. For me, it would be helpful if the numbers for the previous, at least 1 year budget would be helpful. Do you know where I can reference those in the documentation? What we spent on supplies for the current year.
So in the booklet, this booklet,
Okay.
page 7. The supporting documents, not that one, that's preliminary.
Which one am I looking at then?
The first column,
This
22, 23.
I took the paperclip off. It was mine.
Dave.
Okay, is that what you want?
That's,
All right,
that shows you last year.
okay.
I think you're almost there.
If you find it, I'm gonna ask you questions on it, so.
Oh, then I can't find it, I'm sorry.
I'm definitely pretending it's not there.
But Janet,
So the
what-
percentage increase is what on that? 15%? Yep.
But yes,
And-
so in the booklet, it also has athletics and phys ed, where on the presentation, we
Okay.
pull phys ed out, and they do it themselves.
Okay, I'll look at that later.
And so the PPS increase in this area has to do with updating our psychological testing as well as speech evaluation. Oh my gosh, I'm just drawing. Protocols, thank you.
Okay.
So the next slide is on our textbook and classroom library requests. You can see that there is an overall increase, but some of this is due to our really great reading comes out of $4,500 comes out of the middle school and the high school. So that increase of the 11,000 at the high school and the 6,800 at the middle school, part of that is that really great reading. So 4,500 is that. Just like you've heard from Scott, you've heard from Pete, and I'm sure you're gonna hear it again from some of the other supervisors, is that prices have gone up. So that is also included in here, like whether you wanna call it inflation or just prices have gone up. I know at the high school level, we need to update our financial algebra books, and every couple of years, the IB program updates their standards, and of course, they're updating their science standards, so we're going to need an updated IB bio book for next school year as well. I know at the middle school level, there's some new teachers that wanted to increase their classroom libraries, or at least try some new novels that they're more familiar with, or something that they wanted to try. And I think the supporting documents for this are, a lot of it is on page 10 of that packet that Janet was referencing. Questions here?
And textbooks are all aidable, correct?
A majority of them are. I know Janet has more of the answer to that.
It goes off by how many students you have, and they give you a dollar value, so it's not dollar for dollar.
Okay.
So we're spending $117,000 in textbooks, but in this school year, we only get back $66,000 in textbook aid, which probably is gonna be close next year because our enrollment is not really changing drastically.
Okay, the next area is the BOCES services requests. So this is a significant number in total. On the screen, there's a list of some of the things that go into this code. The one thing to know here, Tracy, the question you just asked, everything in this code does get BOCES aid on it. So whenever possible, we try to find areas where maybe we didn't have something that was in this code that's now able to be coded in there, we shift it. So one example of that is Learning Without Tears is a program we use at the elementary school. BOCES has picked that up as something that can be run through them in terms of purchases, so we shifted it to this code because now next year when we purchase it, we're able to get aid back on that purchase. So there's some things in there like that that's just redefining or reshifting where it's able to be coded. Other things in here are science kits at the elementary school that we use for our science program. Delta Math is a program that's used at the high school for math curriculum. No Red Ink is used at the high school, middle school for ELA. How do you say the new Nature's Classroom?
Polka McCready.
What Pete said is the new Nature's Classroom, so looking to send students to that program next year. Portions of that are aidable through BOCES, so that goes on this list. So the pages that are referenced on the bottom of here, pages 9 through 12, is a good place to look for a more complete list. Again, the thing to know is anything in this area are coded here because we can get aid back on them. And then the one that's the first on the bullet list there, the graduation pathways, makes up the majority of this, or a big portion of this. Those are all of our CTE programs that we send students to through Quest R3. That's also Tech Valley, New Visions, the different programs that high school students are going somewhere else for those programs. So this is a code that includes a lot of different things all in one area, but everything here is aidable through BOCES. Intermission as we switch people. Pause one moment.
Where's the popcorn?
Okay, athletics. You've seen this before, the slide, 33 total sports teams at all various different levels. Currently, we have 41 paid coaching positions, hoping to increase that with this budget to add in some assistant coaches. We have 12 athletic programs, and again, if we do pass the budget and bowling is added, then we would have 13. Our sports teams continue to do an amazing job and represent our school very well, and they're competitive at our league and postseason.
Denise, could you talk a little bit about bowling, like what age group, how it would work, and give us some details?
Sure,
please?
I'd love to. Bowling is a winter sport, which is always, it's a good program to have in the winter because it's for boys and girls. It would be labeled as a boys bowling team because the Patroon Conference only offers boys bowling, but girls bowl within the program. So it's a lot of mixed competition with that. Girls would have the opportunity to go on either postseason as representing themselves as a female bowler or with their team on the male bowling team.
Are there any Title IX issues?
Not really, because there's so many girls that are involved in the bowling program throughout all of the districts. No, I would say no.
So, but it can't be a co-ed team? It's a boys' team that girls are allowed to participate in?
Yes. Yes, because they have to label it somehow. And the bowling team, I mean, obviously the expenses with that would be a coach, and then we have jerseys for them as well. They would have their own bowling balls and their own bowling shoes, and they can rent those at the bowling alley. And then you also have alley fees. So using the bowling alley would also be another fee.
Have we done, I'm just asking questions.
Yep.
And I will share that when I was in college, I actually took 2 years of bowling.
Good job.
So, do we have a sense of how many students would be interested in participating?
I haven't put this out recently, but when I did put it out before, we had about 14 kids that wanted to do it. So if this gets approved, then obviously I would go through that process of putting it out to the kids and engaging in interest. Winter season is one of our lowest participations just because of the nature of the teams, right? Because volleyball has 6 kids that can be on the floor, or basketball has 5. So cheerleading usually is our largest, but I think it was close with wrestling this year. They almost overtook them this year. So yeah, so bowling would be a great addition. And I also believe that bowling would meet the needs of different types of students, not just your normal athlete type kids.
Those of us that are less athletic enjoy bowling.
Well, not to a bowling coach. Bowling coach would tell you that it's very athletic. Okay. So if you look at the phys ed and the athletics budgets, the phys ed, the equipment, really it has to do with an outdoor education module that the teachers, Mr. Holler actually went to a conference and went through and sat into one of the sessions on outdoor education. And just to give you an idea of what some of that entails, it covers things like hunter education, it covers angler education, which basically is a fishing type of unit. One of the things that it also covers is NASP, which is the National Archery in Schools program, which we already offer to our students at the middle school level, and part of our high school program. This covers camping, paddle sports, backpacking, you know, so all of those things that I think became very well liked during COVID, right? Because it was a way to get out with your families and do some things and be outdoors. So this would be a great addition for our PE program. So that is a little bit over $1,000, so that falls within the equipment prices there. Supplies are due to inflation for PE. The contractual increase that you see, that $400, is really for the bows and arrows, reconditioning of bows and arrows for our archery program. Athletics, again, equipment is due to increase in that inflation, but also with our replacement plan, I'm trying to replace the last of the Precor units that we have, cardiovascular. They're called recumbent bikes, and recumbent bikes are the kind of bikes that you sit on and you bike. Well, you're sitting in a seat and bike. You also sit on the other ones. Yeah. And so if we're looking to replace all three of those, and then that would, all of the supplies that were donated to us when we first started the program, the fitness center, then all of those would be gone through the cycle of replacement. Contractual increases, decreases, sorry, this was a removal of the lighting for rental that we had put in there because we tried to do that for that one soccer season. We lit the track and field at one point. Supply increases, again, are due to the increase in the bowling, or in implementing the bowling program, uniforms, lane rental, and so forth. Questions?
I asked them. You're up. Mary's up. You gotta grab it.
Just so you know, I was the captain of my bowling team as well. So.
Potential coach.
There's not enough hours in the day. So I'm here for transportation. Good evening, everyone. Our buses are traveling approximately 1,700 miles, and we do about 135 square miles, covering 3 counties and 11 townships in total. So our transportation updates, we're going to talk about lead buses a little bit again today. I know we talked about this last year as well. It cost the district approximately $37,000 for lead buses. We started out with 6 routes in 21. We reduced in 21 in December to 5 routes, and then we further reduced this school year to 4 routes. Ridership is not large. We lessened the amount of buses that were heading out in the evening. Our total trip mileage is about 26 miles, but we're only averaging about 28 students a week. So that's 4 buses going out every single Monday through Thursday with 28 students for that entire week. So some buses are just parking with no students, especially on Mondays. It's very low turnout, so wondering if we wanted to continue that service or not. Bus purchases. I spoke with Petra today. She is our lady at Matthews, and she said that the 2 buses have their luggage compartments on. So we are going to be hearing from her hopefully by the end of the week, where Ken will take a ride out there and he will check out the buses for delivery. So hopefully we'll be getting 2. I'm hoping by the middle of March, as we are obviously waiting a long time for them. Our next bus purchase and replacement plan, we have spec'd out our next round. I thank the board for allowing the letter of intent, because that really puts us in a better position for receiving them in a timely fashion. I am hopeful, but I can't promise, obviously. I'd like to talk about a sprinkler system proposal. Middleburg has just received one. It is designed to remove the snow from the tops of the buses. Obviously, winter weather dictates a lot of vigilance on our part. Manual rooftop rakes are used by our 3 mechanics, who I won't say how old they are, but it's getting difficult for safety and time to get our buses in and out of the yard. Clearing snow and ice from the rooftops with rakes and brushes is very hazardous. It's painful. Injury can cost the district a ton of money. I've looked up a little bit of things here where sprains and fractures and heart attacks, and it's definitely can cost the district thousands of dollars. So I would like to show you this video, just so you can kind of get an idea before we talk about it. Does the video work? I will narrate. So this machine actually is ran with pulleys. It is a battery. It is a medium-sized portable machine, so it can be moved. It is not permanent. So during snow removal, it gets taken out. Drivers drive through. It wipes off approximately like 6 inches of snow within 30 seconds, you can see. So all we would need is a plow to follow it, or follow to, depending on the level of snow. But it can do 12 or more inches of wet, heavy rooftop snow in less than 30 seconds. And despite our efforts, we would never be able to get buses in and out of campus as quickly as this machine works. It'll improve our safety, and it also improves the buses on the road. So, one chunk of ice or snow flying off the top of the bus and hitting a passing motorist could cause damage to their vehicle and also money for the district.
What's the price tag on that?
The price tag is $30,988. It is an aidable piece of equipment. I think, I'm not positive, Janet, 74 around percent aidable, so it really would only cost the district a little over $8,000.
When would you plan on putting it?
It's portable, so it can be moved around, so when the buses are ready to leave in the morning, we would put it in the driveway, and we'd have them drive through on their way out. So it's gonna save a lot of time, plus we have to idle the buses for a really long time, so 50 buses idling for an hour to try to remove all of the snow is
that how you do it now?
25 gallons of
Try to warm them
diesel.
up and then
We try to
have it slide
move
off.
them, yeah, it's hard. The mechanics use roof rakes, and it's tedious, and
Yeah.
it's a very long process, so even on a 2-hour delay, if we can get them going quicker, we can get on campus quicker. It's here.
I'm sorry, the state aid is 71.5%.
I was close.
Mary, question regarding some of the BOCES and the pickups and everything else. Have we been able to or contemplated somehow grouping with other schools, and I don't know, we transport to here and they then take there? It just seems like we're all doing the same thing, and is there a more efficient way that works for everyone?
Twice a year, we do reach out to other districts to see what their plan is for the school year, and right now we do work with Caro Durham, who also works with Ichabod Crane, so they work with us as well. And we transport Tech Valley students and our other P-Tech students to SUNY, and so we're always looking to combine. Catskill had a problem with drivers this year, and we transport their BOCES students over, their VOTEX kids in the morning. So we are constantly looking to see if we can add to someone, or that we can piggyback on them, or vice versa, so that we can,
Yeah, we also piggyback it with Coxsackie Athens.
Yep.
So we do work with everybody.
Thanks.
We have various increases and decreases. Obviously, the inflation has hit us as well. So our contractual increases are, tires and parts. The tires have gone like crazy again. I don't don't know why, but and the company that was supplying us with a certain type of tire that we have, Kenny can no longer get, so he had to get a different one, which has raised the cost of that quite a bit. The price of parts has gone up. He has done a great job of making sure he has them available, so we're not running out, obviously. And we have a new vendor with them. Drug and alcohol testing remains the same, so that price stays the same. And with the current projections to contract transportation, there doesn't seem to be an increase. And there are no changes to the bus garage budget. That gets there.
That's the next slide, Todd.
I know it's frozen.
Yeah, mine was frozen too. It's 34 too, and yeah, there's no changes in the 22-23 for that bus garage budget.
Any questions from Mary before she leaves to next? Thank you. So we'll continue, even though it's not moving. That's okay. So other program budget component items. So we have some BOCE services. We have a decrease in that, in some of those different things. We have $2,347 decrease from last year. That includes home instruction review, textbook, arts exchange programs. In the contractual part, we have a $2,000 increase, and that's due to the physician's services. For food service, we are not asking for an intra-fund transfer. Food service is doing very well. At the end of last school year, they ended up with a positive fund balance of $147,254. We are allowed to keep 2 months' worth of anticipated expenditures in fund balance, so we have to spend it down. So this year we purchased some of the new cafeteria equipment down at the elementary school. They got a brand new line, we got a new dishwasher, we got an ice maker, because we have to, or else the state is gonna question why we have such a large fund balance. So this year we're not asking for general fund to help. Special aid fund, that's the transfer to federal. That has not changed. We still have to pay 20% of the summer handicap expenses. The state pays 80% of the children that go to a 4408 program during July and August. So I'm not proposing any increase to that line item either. Mike.
Okay, so what you don't see on this slide behind me is a blue screen, but no, it's our tax cap calculation. And what we've done here, what Janet's shown, is what our allowable tax cap has been over the last 4 years, going back to the 2019-20 school year, which presents us with the allowable tax cap that is run through a formula, and then what the actual tax levy looks like. So as you can see, we've been all over the board with the allowable tax cap. Our number comes out pretty high this year at an allowable 3.56% tax cap.
3.10.
What's that?
3.10 this year. Oh, sorry. This past year. Okay.
Correct. Past year was at 3.56, so this year it comes out at 3.10. So again, you see that fluctuation coming back down a little bit in regards to what we can collect from the community. So one of the things that we want to take a look at is, as we present all this to you folks this year, or at this meeting today, is to give you kind of an idea of where we're at. And then, obviously if we need to go, if the board decided to go above and beyond that 3.10, we would need a 60% 50% majority vote in order to do that. Not quite sure we are at a position right now where the board wants to go above that. So, with that said, what does it mean going from a 3.10 tax levy, and given our preliminary budget, which we presented to you tonight, so we taking a look at a tax levy of $18,299,792. So right now that would put us at a deficit in the budget of almost $290,000. But as we start to move down the tax levy to get to a point to where we are more used to being, we only went as low as 2.50% as a tax levy increase, which would allow us to obviously scale down what we're able to collect from the community at $18.1 million, 18.2, which would require us to decrease the preliminary budget an additional $396,000 of what we talked about this evening. Oh, there it is. We're back. We're back to real time. So, you know, what we're really going to need from the board is to give us an idea of what is your comfort level. Where do you want to be in regards to, you know, getting down to that tax levy increase? You see the range there, 3.10 down to 2.50. Do we want to go lower than that? Because what we will need to do over the next couple of weeks, really, you know, we're going to be back at this next week to present, you know, more of the budget and kind of getting us closer to where we want to be. But we need some direction from the board in regards to what we want to, what you're comfortable in getting to.
So then, just if I understand it, so the budget that was presented then goes to that 3.10 allowable tax cap.
That would be our 2% tax cap.
Correct, correct. So that is what we would be allowed to request from the public with a 50% majority vote.
Correct.
Correct. Anything above that would require a 60% vote. Okay, so then the question is, in reading the chart, I just want to make sure that I'm reading it correctly. If we were to instead go for a 3% tax levy, then the dollars associated with that 3% are $18,282,043, and we would need to reduce what was presented by $307,283. Okay,
That's
all right.
correct. Yep.
So, thoughts? Go for it.
Honestly, it's hard to know without understanding what the cuts might be.
Right.
Because I think even with the even the rollover budget was above the, right? So we're looking at taking something, I mean, understanding unless we go for the super majority vote. And understanding you, I assume haven't done the exercise to make cuts to get to any particular level here. Can you speak to how we might be able to, I mean, if we're looking at a minimum of 290,000 approximately to cut just to stick to the 3.1% and potentially going up from there, where do you think it's likely to come from?
Yeah, so what we have started to do already, knowing these slides prior to tonight and working with our administrative team, is to have them go back and take a look at some of the requests and some of the things that have been asked for. We are looking at this as a K-12 district-wide budget process, and so that everybody understands what our numbers are and what our needs are, and start to prioritize some of the things that we need to do. So if we have school tomorrow, our cabinet meetings, we meet on Tuesday. I'm seeing shaking heads and laughing. We begin to have those, not begin to have those conversations, but go in depth more into where does that money come from, because it is a large amount. You know, we're talking, if you want to get down to that 2.50, $400,000 that we need to find within what was presented tonight to get to that number. You know, it's a process. We don't have, it's going to require a lot of discussion on our administrative group in order to find that money. So what we need from you folks is really an understanding of, you know, where do you want us to get to from a percentage standpoint, and then we will come back to the board and present what that looks like.
Janet, I need you to clarify a couple things for me first. On the pages aren't numerated, but on the next to last page, it says your tax cap calculation at the top of that page. There's two columns. One says allowable tax cap, and one says actual tax levy. And then on the next, or the bottom half of that page, is this tax levy. And in the left-hand column, it says tax levy percentages. Which of those numbers in the bottom left-hand column are identical or the same representation as the above? I made that way too complicated, because I understand.
So with the tax cap calculation, it tells us how far we're allowed to tax our community.
Yeah, I'm not asking that.
But then we can do a tax levy less. Like with this budget, we had a 3.56 tax cap, but we only did 2.25 tax levy.
Right. So what I'm asking is, if we're choosing one of these numbers,
Yeah.
correct? Which of these columns is it going to end up on the upper part? Is it?
It's going to go under
the tax cap, or is it the actual tax levy?
It'll go under the actual tax levy.
Okay, that's where I'm at. So if that's the actual tax levy, what is our allowable tax cap?
3.10.
All right. I will state that I will not be comfortable at that level. I understand that cuts are painful, but I think that 3.1 is a bit much for our community. I truly believe that for most folks, the tax bill and the check they write in September is the biggest bill they're going to write all year long. And the 7 of us create that bill.
I'll jump in next. So last year, when that number was being discussed, I had asked for the 2.25. And I'm going to ask 2.5. I'm right at the bottom. I might even go a little lower, because Dave is right. The community sees this tax bill as one of the biggest things in the world. And I know we can go higher, because it says we can, by law or whatever, calculation. But I don't know if the pocketbooks can manage that. I mean, and I know all the people out there are looking at me going, how could you do that? And I go, I know, I get it. We all live in the same world. Things are expensive. But I don't know how I can ask these people to write a bigger number. So if you can find a way to live at 2.5, that would be nice. If you can't, I'll think about it.
I think one of the things that the public thinks about is they have 2% in their head. So even though we're allowed to go up to 3.10, they think 2%. So I think that we really, it's a very fine line, you know, in balancing the needs of everyone, the students and the taxpayers and everything else. So I don't know that I'm quite at the 2.5, but I'm definitely not at the 3.10. Angela and Jim, I'm gonna put you on the spot, sorry, but we've got to talk about it.
Okay, I would love it to be at the 2.5. I just like Jay said, I don't know where that 400 is coming from. What are we cutting? So that's my concern. Where's the balance?
I think same thing. A few people have said, you know, what are we cutting out for this? But bottom line is we have a responsibility to the community, especially with the state which our economy is in right now, and to do the best we can. But it's very hard to decide without knowing what's being cut out. If we can get some type of input, that would be great. But I think we need to try to stay as low as possible. So I agree with Eric and Dave. I'd like to see what is removed, and we could possibly save something if necessary. I think that would be our responsibility, or that's my take.
Follow-up question. I don't want to create extra work. However, if the target would be to get down to 2.5, I assume that in doing the exercise, you're prioritizing cuts. And you can see we're starting out at a certain level, you cut something, you drop down. So I know I'm thinking about this too simplistically, but it seems like as you take things away, you're dropping down to 3.1, 2.8, 2.6, etc. And I think what would be helpful is to see what if what we're talking about is the biggest decrease is down to 2.5, you know, and we're going to hear about what those cuts are to get there. I think it'd be helpful to understand a little bit of the moving parts aspect, to say that at 2.5 looks like this, here are some of the cuts maybe, and talking about it there, just talking the abstract, not knowing what it will be. But if in that bucket there's something, I think it would be good to understand what's being cut so we can decide, is there something there that we actually want to add back, or are we comfortable with 2.5? And so I think understanding a little bit of that interchangeability of how we get down to 2.5 with this package of cuts, but then want to consider adding one or two things, whatever it is back, would take us to then 2.6 or 2.65. I don't want to create extra work, but if it's possible to be able to talk about it in that way, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, and again, thankfully we're not asking, the next time we present is not the final budget. So what we will do is, if 2.5 is where the board wants us to get to, we will present a budget that gets us down to that level, and we can include what was removed in order to get to that number. And then that discussion can happen. If I remember correctly, we'll be seeing a lot of each other over the next couple of weeks, but that'll be part of that process.
And the one thing I would say is, in getting down to that 2.5 though, if there is something that absolutely everyone feels very strongly should be included, then please let us know. I think it's a balancing act of balancing the needs of everyone for that. So I don't think anyone is saying, other than Eric, 2.5, but I couldn't resist.
That's okay.
But I think you're hearing what we're saying.
Okay. So 2.5 is where we want to
Work
get
to 2.5, but
we'll
we're giving, or at least I'm giving a little out to say, you know, if there's something that you really strongly believe in that will get you to 2.55, then, you know, present it. I don't know, am I talking out of line? What do other people feel? Or is 2.5 it, and that's it, and get us to 2.5?
Well, if I may, I think our target should be for a community to try to come as low at 2.5. With the, how to say, the variables in order to what needs are and everything else, I think our target should be, you know, what you mentioned before, everyone says 2%, everyone kind of agrees to that. I don't know if everyone understands that and they accept that because of, but I think we should come in at the 2.5, have the data at that point, and then move from there based on the needs. I think that would be the best accepted from our community moving forward. My take.
I think I've said this maybe 4 years in a row, I'm not sure. The problem with 2% increase or allowable increase is it's guaranteed to go up 2%. Not just here, but almost everywhere. And then the magic of math, the math that takes place with school budgets, it can be or cannot be anywhere near 2%. I'm not at 2.5, I'll just say that, and I'm not at 0. And I do know that just the simple rollover budget, so there's already been cuts made to get it to 3.1, if my understanding is correct.
Well, yes.
Right, so, you know, in agreement with Jay, without presenting a detailed shopping list or cafeteria list of these cuts equal this result, I don't think we want to see that. Maybe we do, because that would be draconian. I don't think we're there yet, but definitely I would need to see, like Jay said, you know, wherever we are, wherever we end up, how we got there from the rollover budget, because we're already, I hope everybody understands that, we're below a rollover budget. So how do we get even further down? But I also know that we added a lot of stuff last year.
So, if I may go one more time, on slide 2, there was a comparison of the number from the approved budget for 22-23, and then the 23-24 preliminary budget. And what we said is there's a 2.29 increase from 22-23 in what's being presented now, going back to the statement of, well, how much are we really increasing? So if I'm correct, that means that the budget's increasing 2.29% as you presented it today. And with the percent levy, which is not the same as the percent budget increase, so I think that's always a confusing number, at the fact that the budget is going to increase only 2.29 if we took what we have today, but the levy would be 3.1. And what we're asking is that the levy, which is the rate of increase in change, if you want to call it acceleration, you could, of the amount, is allowable at 3.1. And what I'm asking is that the acceleration go only at 2.5. And that probably will get us a rough number, let's say it's 2% increase in the budget. Because it's the constant acceleration that kills us, and that's why I push back so hard on it. The real number, when I look at the budget increasing by 2.29, that is acceptable. That's below the cost of living index that's going on right now. But the taxpayers don't see it that way. And I appreciate everybody's input. I'm just trying to put a foot on the pedal for brake. And I know that if you went for 3.1, for me personally, not the school district, I would find that acceptable. But not everybody in my neighborhood can. So if possible, 2.5. And what everybody's saying is, if it turns out to 2.7 or 2.8, and I'm in agreement with that too, that if for whatever happens in your analysis you say, I can't do this, I can't cut this, I'll swallow the uncomfortable swallow and say yes. But when I look at the numbers, you gotta, even to hit 310, you're cutting 300, right? 289. So you gotta start slicing just to get to 310. And if you can find a little bit more to slice while you're doing it to get closer to 2.5, I think the voters would be comfortable.
If you look at that preliminary budget, that explains a lot between rollover from the actual this year's budget to the rollover to the preliminary. It shows you a lot of where the cuts were, where the increases were.
And that was a huge find on the pharma stuff that you did. I mean, that was great.
One last comment, if I may. I think Eric summed it up well about, we're looking at the range, we're gonna try to figure this out. I think what I'm going to say is obvious, but my concern is we've been doing a lot of really good work in recent years trying to provide more support for students and teachers and to try to really improve student performance. And I am concerned that even at the 3.1% level of cut, if we were to max out the tax levy, that I'd have some concern about what impact we'll have to that. I mean, that said, I want to talk about that range of cuts so we can understand. But do have that concern, and I realize that, I guess to the extent we can understand how much we might be, I don't know the right word would be, but cutting back a bit on the things we think we need to improve student performance that have been started, like where those cuts are, which might not be apparent to me. If I see a line item with a dollar amount, I won't necessarily appreciate the significance of it. So if you can come with that context also, which I think goes to probably, I think it was Tracy who said, if you are identifying a cut but recommending that we keep it for a reason like that, that's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
So we will go back to the drawing board with that goal of 2.5 in mind, and in doing so we will keep track of the reductions that were made and be able to speak to those reductions and then present it back to the board, have further discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the mid-year update and the comprehensive plan by the building administrators, another presentation. Oh, and one of the things I did want to say are all of these documents, I believe, are in board docs. So if any point the program component, people can refer to that on board docs.
Yes, and there's also a webpage, a budget webpage that they can go to. This way everything's in one spot.
Great,
I
thank
think
you.
tomorrow it'll be updated.
Okay, good evening again. Our next presentation. So we wanted to provide an update. This is the mid-year update around our school improvement work. So I'm going to start out and give some information about the district, and then Sarah's going to share from the district level as well, and then the building principals will come up for a portion later. So just to walk you through what we're going to be sharing tonight, the continuous school improvement process and district goals. This is what we start with. Each of these presentations is the foundation of the work that we do throughout the year, is the school improvement process, and then the district goals, that is the grounding foundation for everything we do. Also tonight, the board has in front of them, this was an outcome from the January workshop that we did with the board, and we talked about some of these different documents and all these different pieces that go into school improvement. So if you want to set aside your budget binder, you now have a school improvement data binder at the recommendation of Mr. Bennett, so thanks for that suggestion, it's a good one. So the idea being, when we refer to these different documents, whether it's our goal document, our mission, our vision, the building plans, the district plan, there are so many different pieces that go into the school improvement work. This binder is the place that now houses everything that we have done so far for the 22-23 school year,
And this will now be part of our practice around school improvement, so that every year we start off with the binder, and as we do different presentations and different pieces of the work happens throughout the school year, we'll give you additional documents that all fall into this one physical binder. So everything is digital, we provide the links and they're there, but I think sometimes there's definitely a benefit to, here is your binder. So when we have these conversations, it's all there for you to refer to. So again, tonight we're going to talk a little bit from the district perspective, just an update of what has happened with relation to the district improvement plan, and then each of the building principals will speak briefly to some of the work that they have done with their BLTs at the building level for their building improvement plans. So grounding our work is our school improvement calendar that we have for this school year. So I put up January and February, the January board workshop that we did with the board. Last month, we included portions of this, but we didn't have all the mid-year data for that. So now we have all that data that is in your binder, but that's kind of the work that happens throughout January with regards to our school improvement work. And then in February, it's the board share of this information. We originally had February 13th. Obviously, we shifted that, and we're doing it tonight on the 27th. But that's where we are in the calendar all for the year for school improvement. Second time tonight that I'll reference this, the district goals are the foundation for all this work, so everything we do, we connect back to curriculum, culture, and community. Yeah, Tracy.
And I just wanted to say that for next year, when we look at the calendar, then if it makes sense for us to move our board workshop till February, then that is something that absolutely can be done.
So at the district level, some work that has happened, one piece is what I was just referencing, is this data binder and the continuation of the processes that we use around school improvement. So I'm just going to speak to two things briefly. One is what I was just saying, the binder is a place that everything will now be housed. And then the second one that's different this year is the mid-year data report. So as we continually evolve these processes, we look for what has worked well in the previous year and what can we do to even refine and perfect that process for school improvement. So for the past couple of years, our mid-year data report really only included things that were specifically referenced in our school improvement plans. So whatever was in the data section of our school improvement plans, at the mid-year point, that's what we were pulling out to look for those specific data pieces. An evolution of that is we now have set, here's the mid-year data that we want to look at every year. Regardless of the specifics that are in our school improvement plans, what are the pieces of data that we want to look at the mid-year point every single year? So what's in that report that's in the binder, and a link is provided online as well, it's our attendance data, it's discipline data, it's our iReady data, ESGI data. So it's specific sets of data that every year in January/February we'll be pulling to say at the mid-year point, this is where we were at for these pieces of information. This should sound familiar because we've done the same thing for end-of-year reports for probably, I think this is now will be the 5th year that we do that end-of-year report, that every year we are doing a snapshot, end of year, here's where we landed for our data. This is just making a mid-year standard report for that as well. So that's kind of the evolution of our school improvement work, some of the key things that have shifted and evolved this year specifically for that. With that, I'm going to have Sierra speak to the communication.
Hi everybody. So since I started in August, we've made a number of improvements to our communications plan. The first thing when stepping in that I took care of was the bi-weekly communications. We have implemented these at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. At the middle and high school, parents and families receive an email with the bi-weekly newsletter every 2 weeks, and it includes a synopsis of what students have been learning in the classroom in those past 2 weeks. This is a voluntary document that teachers submit information for and I put together. And then at the elementary level, teachers are provided with a template that they can send out to improve their at-home communication. They should be doing this every 2 weeks, and most of them are, but some choose to do it more frequently and use it every week. From there, we have the Parents as Partners seminars, which serve as a resource for parents on a number of topics that affect their students. And for parents who can't make it, we've actually been putting a few synopses of those presentations in our monthly e-news, so those are available online as well. Back in the fall, we put out a communications survey. This went out in October, we wrapped it up in November, and we had over 200 responses collected. Overall, the survey showed that communications are better than they were a year ago. We then sent out a PowerPoint sharing those results with the same stakeholders so they could see what the results were. And from that survey, we created a list of action items that we have since implemented. The first action item from that survey was redesigning the website, which I'm sure many of you have seen. The primary complaint on the survey was that the website was not user-friendly. So we went in, reorganized things, took out a lot of information and redistributed it. And we've gotten some great feedback so far with how user-friendly it is. Additionally, we've been much more active on social media than we have in the past. Since September 1st, we posted 344 times on Facebook alone, and we've reached over 148,000 people. So that's pretty incredible. I will say that our highest reaching posts have been our snow day videos, so there's an opportunity for growth tomorrow, Mr. Bennett.
Working on that right now.
And so we've actually been able to grow our Facebook following by over 400 and our Instagram following by over 300. So we're up to over 2,600 Facebook followers so far, which is an amazing way to reach our community. And it's an engaging group of people online. I don't think we post something without something being commented on. People are always wanting to know what's going on in the schools, so it's a great opportunity for us. And we will continue to create engaging content and snow day videos in the future. One of the newest things that we just started a couple weeks ago were the digital signs. I'm sure many of you have seen that we honor our athletic seniors on the digital signs that are graduating. We have started doing that for seniors who are involved in other clubs and organizations but might not be involved in athletics. So this started at Scott's suggestion, which was using Robotics Club, but we have since used Yearbook Club, FFA, Student Council, and a number of others that we'll be going through until May. And then, do you want to talk about next steps? Okay. In terms of communication next steps, obviously there's a number of things. This is still my first year, but there's a number of things that we're starting. The very next thing you'll see a change to is the institution of our athletic newsletter. So we removed athletics from our monthly e-news because of how, well, it was based off of our communication survey, but athletics takes up a big portion of our e-news. So at the end of each season, we'll be wrapping up pictures and messages from the coaches, community write-ups, things like that, honoring our seniors. Over the summer, we'll work on updating our listservs, so the emergency communications, things like that, making sure all the phone numbers and emails are correct for parents, emergency contacts, and things like that, and then working on solidifying our crisis communication plan for the 23-24 school year.
Awesome work, Sierra. In terms of next steps for school improvement, it's really a continuation of our cycle for the year. So at this point in the year, I start working on summer plans. That means our summer data workshop where we pull together stakeholders from across the district to look at our data from this year and plan for next year. And a big piece of that is our building profiles, which is what I was referencing before. It's that end of year data report that captures how we did for the school year. We have a new point person at Questar that helps with some of that data work, so I've actually been working with her to take last year's report. No, we obviously don't have end of year data yet, but as we start to think about the end of year, how do we want to perfect that report? How do we want to make it cleaner? There's parts of it that we added last year that I don't think are easy to read, but we added them because it was the first time it was included. So just continually evolving and perfecting that end of year report is some of the work that's starting now for the summer. So any questions at this district level in terms of school improvement process or communication? Yes.
I think what will be really helpful is as we go through for, let's say, the mid-year data or the year-end data, to have those norm reference points that we can compare it to, and whether it's as well as to previous years.
Just a comment. Yeah. You've done a lot, Sierra, since you've started. I mean, rather off a lot that you've already done, and there's a long list to do, and based on what you've accomplished so far, it seems like the next steps are doable, but nice job.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'm going to let Sierra retreat to the back of the room, and the principals are going to join me. And we're going to mix it up tonight. We're going to start with high school so that Mr. Mahan doesn't always have to be the first person to go. So for each of the buildings, the principals are going to speak to the work that has been done, that has been part of their building improvement plans, and again, next steps that go with it. Ms. Gorgon, over to you.
Thank you. So this is obviously in reference to our high school set plan, and the first commitment that's up there is Commitment 1, Strategy 2, and I'll go over what that is in 1 second. So I don't want, if you're referencing the high school set plan, I am going out of order, and there's a reason for that, but I will get to that. So like I said, the first strategy, or the second strategy we had under Commitment 1 was to build capacity to support the use of data for instructional purposes. So I just shortened it up there, use of instructional data. So there's a couple things that we've done so far. Todd stole a little bit of my thunder by sharing there is a new person at Questar that helps us with our data, and she's been absolutely amazing. So there's a system that we use called Cognos, and it hosts a lot of the 3 through 8 tests as well as the high school Regents exams. And so what we can do is we can utilize that data in different types of reports. So a couple of the reports that can be broken down, or we can break it down by standard. We can break it down by how many of our students got whatever number that was on the test correct, the number of incorrect, were there any outliers or trick questions, and we can also compare it to our local area as well as our RIC. And I know Todd explained this, I think during our February workshop, during one of our times together. But what the RIC is it's not all of New York State, but it's a wide enough selection of students that it's comparable to New York State. So that's really exciting that we have these reports. And what Todd and I did earlier in the year is we sat down with all of the departments, our 4 core departments, ELA, Science, Social Studies, and Math, and we went over in just different reports that they could use and utilize throughout their department times that they work together, as well as we provided them 4 hours of the November Superintendent's Conference Day. So 2 of those hours were us working together with middle school and high school, and working in the cafeteria, just going through the data. And then we provided them with 2 hours afterwards to kind of what are your next steps? How are you going to utilize this data to better inform your instruction? Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything with my notes. Nope, I think I got everyone for that one. Does anyone have any questions on that before I go over or to the next one? Okay, so the next one is the Commitment 2, which is establish and administer a chronically absenteeism survey. So what we did there was we identified a group of students based on the number of unexcused absences they had, and we did a random sampling of those students and administered the survey to them. The surveys were administered one-on-one, and the adult that worked with the student read the questions out loud. There was a number of questions on the survey. Some of them were just basic collecting demographics, like age level, things like that. The rest got into the nitty-gritty of why do you not come to school. We were able to identify patterns and some trends. This was shared out with the high school RTI team, response to intervention team, as well as our high school BLT team. And just some of I'll share just a couple of the results. So what we did figure out is that students are not coming to school due to anxiety, due to having issues with working, school interferes with working even though it shouldn't. One of them that was an indicator was that nobody misses me when I don't come to school. So that is something I think we're going to focus on as a whole school. To me, that's an easy fix, just acknowledging students when they've been absent and letting them know that we do miss them. The thing that popped out to us as well too is that the biggest thing that students reported that it was not a safety concern. It's not that they felt bullied or that they didn't feel safe while they were here at school. So that was one of the positives that we got out of the absenteeism survey. The third thing on there is our homeschool communication. In addition to what Sierra had shared earlier, what we have done specifically at the high school level is in September, there was time provided to all teachers to create a welcome back letter / email. A lot of teachers sent these letters out via email. It opened up that communication, so now the parent doesn't have to go searching for a specific teacher's email. And yes, they were getting blasted with all of their students' teachers' emails, but at least it was something that parents could go back and look for, hey, like I know that one teacher sent me an email way back when, I have a question now, let me just find that email. So that was one of the things that we've been working on. Another thing that we've been working on, we've had these Spartan cards around. These predate me. They're the Good Notes Home, but we're being a little bit more intentional about it. So I bring them to all of our faculty meetings. They're available in the main office. I have a stack of them that sit at the end of my desk. So if there's teachers that come in my office, they can grab the cards. But I provide time at all the faculty meetings for teachers to think of somebody that has done something, you know, that's been either outstanding, or maybe it's like the middle of the road kid that you've noticed has been doing something like, I don't know, stepping it up a little bit more, or just like catching some of those kids being good, the ones that don't always get acknowledged, and we've been sending those home. We didn't start this till October, and I don't have the exact numbers from October, but from November to February, we have sent out 89 of the Spartan cards. I know a lot of the teachers have shared that they're getting positive feedback, whether it's from the students themselves or from parents sending an email stating, hey, my son or daughter got the Spartan card from you, or the Good Note Home, you know, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Excuse me. And then the last thing that we have not really gotten to yet is it's our next steps. We're going to, this is our commitment 1, strategy 1, and it was the collaborative collegial visits. It was delayed because we changed some of the initial language that was in our high school set plan. So the teachers wanted a little bit, the teachers on BLT wanted a little bit more time to create a survey. The survey was sent out to teachers to see, hey, when you go to visit one another's classrooms, what are the things you're working on? One of the biggest things that came back was technology, like how are you using instructional technology in your classroom? So our next faculty meeting, we're devoting to kind of like opening up and sharing with like the rest of the faculty, hey, this is not like an evaluatory experience whatsoever. It's one colleague visiting another colleague's classroom, and what are they seeing that they would like to try to implement in their classroom, and we're going to provide them some time after they do this colleague visit, some time to just talk and discuss, like, hey, what did you notice? Why did you do that? When do you think I could try that in my classroom? Just having those like collegial conversations at the end. Questions?
Okay, so with our middle school set plan, you know, if you recall from last summer, really, you know, a lot of our the goals we kind of strategies formulated were really from finding the root causes of things, and they have a similar theme in each building with just some different kind of action type items. In terms of instructional data, I mean, time is always precious. Trying to find that time, and that was a big thing from our summer meetings that we gathered was, you know, we need time to be able to look at the data to kind of break it down. This year, early October, Mr. Hildendorf came with me and we went to team meetings where we shared out the state data, which we haven't had good state data in a while, which we talked about in our January workshop, along with the fall iReady that we gave to begin the school year. This team started looking at that briefly, but then we expanded upon that at our Students Conference Day in November. And it was really helpful for some of the things they pulled out of it, some of the things they were seeing, so that they could then bring it back into their teams to be discussing, okay, what are some action items, just within our own teams that we can focus on with our students. Currently, one of the things that we're also able to look at, and this is kudos to Mr. Berkshire, who has really taken a hold of our intervention compass. I think you've heard about that. This year is a tool that creates data walls where we can put all our students and data is imported from a variety of whether it's iReady, school tool, things like that, and we can create a data wall. So for example, here at the mid-year, we're able to take the fall iReady and have it compared to the mid-year one, and we were able to you had the whole roster of each grade level there. And it's a lot easier than looking at some of the iReady reports. So this intervention compass, I think, is really paying off for us to look at students as a whole cohort, but just even also individually. And whether it's looking at their quarter grades compared to iReady scores. And it's a pretty neat, slick tool. Mr. Berkshire has been going into the teams and really helping them with the intervention compass to really learn how to utilize this tool. We're getting a lot of good reviews on it so far. We will be continuing here at the mid-year. We started last week in a faculty meeting. Again, time is precious, so trying to find that time. Teams started breaking down the mid-year reports and kind of taking a look at, hey, we have some students who are making some growth. We have some students that are either kind of staying the same or maybe some dropped. Okay, what's going on with them? So again, trying to break down and have some conversations with some of these individual students. We definitely know some individual students already is good about flagging, kids that rush through it, kids that, you know, green is that they seem to be going at a good pace, yellow is, they're going a little too fast maybe, and red is like, yeah, they just flew through it. So, you know, we actually had some students retake some of it too. So it's, you know, hit or miss, and, you know, those are some things you sort through. You know, you have some, again, we were pleased with some of the growth that some of our students are continuing to make, which is a good thing. Some of the students we need to take a look at why maybe they're just staying the same or drop too. And again, some of it can go to just a student maybe come in that morning and not have been in the best mood to be taking the test too. And we are heading into a big testing part coming up here with middle school and elementary. It becomes pretty tough in the spring with students. You know, we have the ELA state test in April. Again, in May will be the math, then we'll be looking to do iReady again. So it does, as much as we like the data, it also does become tough for our students.
Anyone else have it on?
Why is it always you?
Okay. Anyways, also another in terms of, you know, data and stuff too is, you know, we have our RTAG framework where we have some students who are put into a tier 2 type labs in our building, and one of the things that we had discussed through the summer was trying to be more consistent with our kind of the framework of how our labs look. Because from year to year we may have different teachers who are doing the labs. We want to have that general, similar to like a curriculum map almost, but this framework of what a lab should look like. Again, giving the teachers some flexibility depending on the students and what their needs may be. So Mr. Berkshire and I this fall have met with all the teachers who are doing labs, gather notes and thoughts from them about the lab. We have compiled that into a draft document at this point, and we'll be going back to those teachers again to share it with them, to again get some kind of final feedback from them, because we want them to be a part of shaping this here in middle school, and we'll be looking to finalize that here as we finish out the spring here. In terms of our pre-test on paragraph writing, one of our strategies was to create and implement a consistent vertically aligned approach to paragraph writing across the middle school, and building off of what is happening at the elementary level in 5th grade. And so we, you know, our ELA teachers have been meeting with our Questar ELA specialist to talk about what do we want paragraph writing to look like, what's some of the common language we can all agree to, and also support what's happening at the elementary level as we go up through. And they recently did administer a pre-test to kind of get a baseline with things. They're going to continue looking at the data from that. We're going to give it another kind of post-test come end of May, June, just to kind of see with some of the instruction they've done throughout the spring how that has changed, and to start collecting some data on writing with students, because one of the things from the iReady, if you recall, is just reading. There's not a writing component to that, and that is something we want to make sure we build up on it more, because at the state test there is writing on that. So we need to be gathering some more in-house data on that to help support our students there. With chronic absenteeism, so we did a similar survey that Ms. Gordon was talking about with the high school students, with our middle school students. One of the things that's, I think, interesting that's coming from the data with that is we also, this fall, Brooke mentioned a little bit in our budget presentation with Aperture, an SEL screening tool that we've been using, K-12. With the students that were kind of needing support in SEL, we are finding similar names are some of our chronic absenteeism students. So we're getting some different data here that's really starting to show some of the things that are with our students here, and almost create a picture of, some things we can do and how can we then start supporting them, some interventions. So that's been interesting to look at compare those things. We also had the students take a survey, and we call it kind of a connection survey, and had them write down adults in the middle school or that they feel they have a connection with. And we also asked our staff to do it with the students. Right now we're kind of compiling all that data right down to see, but it's kind of interesting. You see some, as we're looking at it, Mr. Hutchins, our BLT chair, and myself have been looking at it. You have some students who wrote down, I don't have a connection, but then you have some of the faculty, staff who wrote, 2 or 3 people wrote their name next to a student who they thought they had a connection with. So we're going to try to take a list of students who feel like they don't have a connection. And typically, we've done this before, you might get about 10 per grade level, and try to just dig a little deeper with it, with the teams, and try to figure out what we can do, and then how can we promote, and again, are some of these students, are they tied into some of our chronically absentee students? And we might, so again, trying to get some different versions of data to figure out, what is happening with some of our students, and how can we make them feel more connected and want to be at school more. So it's been interesting looking at some of that. And then with interventions, we have started some different interventions, some of our chronic absenteeism students, whether it's working with our social worker, working with counselors, working with the teams in terms of creating different types of plans to try to support students, and whether it's some of their behaviors that might be impacting them on a daily basis. The homeschool communication, Sierra kind of talked quite a bit about it. She's been awesome with the bi-weekly newsletters, the e-news, and Facebook's live now, Instagram's live, and I think it's been great just to see that. And I think, like you said, there's just been a lot of positive vibes out there on some of the social media things of, again, showcasing some of the great things that our students are doing on a daily basis around the school, whether it's during the regular school day, after school, on the weekends, whether it's at games or Science Olympiad, robotics. So it's been a good thing. So thank you to her and her hard work. And that was a big thing in the summer that we talked about, was also the website. So in terms of looking at some next steps of middle school BLT, what we're looking at, ongoing data review, that is just something that we will continue to keep talking about, and we are trying to really continue to build that culture of how do we consistently use data every day, every week. How are we looking at data? How's it helping us, and how's it helping us change things for the better for our students? Again, we're looking at finalizing our paragraph writing, the framework for RTI instruction, and then also the last thing there is one of the other things we have in our SEP was to provide some feedback to Sierra about the website. So she's coming to a couple of our BLT meetings, and we're working on that as a BLT right now to get her some feedback in the upcoming weeks about the website. Just some thoughts we have of what we're seeing. Any questions? Thank you.
So at the elementary level, thank you. So at the elementary level, as we've been looking at our SEP plan, we are continuing the threads that we've been talking about with you for quite a while. The very first area is looking at academic instruction, and we really have spent a lot of time and energy talking about how we can enhance the phonics learning of our students. Now, phonics does not cover every area of reading, but it is critical. And so we've spent a lot of time, and with Todd has provided a lot of support. Our instructional coaches have provided a lot of support here as well, making sure that teachers really are understanding what is being asked of them and making sure they're supported as they do that work. What I've been incredibly excited about is that teachers are finding great reward and payoff in doing this work. They have not lost autonomy as they're implementing these very structured plans. And I don't see less creativity in their classrooms. But I have teachers running to my office and saying, Pete, look at this data that I found for my class this week. And what they're finding is, as we've gone through the fall and the winter, and they've instructed our younger students on identifying initial and final consonants, medial vowels, i.e. short vowel sounds, words that become more complex with diagraphs or with silent E, what they're finding is that as what they're giving spelling tests in the kids, comparing them from the beginning of the year, where they've provided instruction and explicit instruction in these areas, when we gave our winter tests, how much growth the kids were making, and that the pattern was kids were mastering the skills that they taught in the fall and started to crumble on the skills that we're currently in the midst of, which means they haven't mastered them yet. And they're just so excited to see a direct correlation between the lessons I'm teaching day in, day out are making a difference for our young students. And they're spending a lot of time collaborating. What parts of our current phonics instructional tools are working really, really well? You know, there's some articles Sierra shared about our super detectives, right, as they were looking at phonics, and, you know, but our kids are celebrating that the work that they're doing, and our teachers are collaborating what tools are working well for these particular components, and how can they currently dig deeper into the tools that maybe are a little bit less familiar, such as the really great reading tools at the classroom level. And so those collaborations are happening with the instructional coaches, as looking at our overall curriculum maps, and it's really been very powerful. When I use the word Tier 1 really great reading, what that means is we're using really great reading as a core part of our classroom instruction in grades 3, 4, 5 this year. One of the reasons that we're doing that is because those 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, because of the impact of COVID over the last few years, absolutely missed out on essential phonics instruction. And so those teachers are saying, we wouldn't normally teach these lessons, but we want to go back and make sure we are filling in the holes that those kids have experienced. And so that's happening at Tier 1, it's happening with all students. In addition to that, for our kids who are receiving intervention in reading, we're using really great reading as a Tier 2, meaning an intervention program or even a one-on-one program if absolutely necessary. Using those tools has been really helpful. What we're finding is that kids are responding and teachers are digging more deeply into the materials and finding ways to help kids master these phonics skills. But the energy is significant. And when we went through and actually looked at our SEP, and this was actually discussed at our January day together during the workshop, and someone said, you know, if you had quantitative data for each grade, that would be really helpful. And I said, well, actually that is in our SEP. And as we went through and updated our SEP in the middle of the year, we actually found that we had 6 small phonics goals for the end of the year. One for kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. We've met 3 of those goals already this year. But I think it's because the teachers have been so diligent about really implementing this work and feeling the support. I also want to say that when we're using data, I'm using phonics as an example now, but our math intervention coaches have been just as diligent and spending a lot of time with teachers. So when I get to go in the conference room, and it's been used earlier in the day by a grade level of teachers meeting with Carrie Caputi, and there are post-it notes, like giant post-it notes, surrounding the perimeter of the room, and they're analytically looking at what are we doing here, what are the problems in this part of the curriculum, what are the next steps to address these, and they're walking through that work and spending, you know, big chunks of time doing that. That's powerful. And those pieces become steps as we look at using Intervention Compass, and Brian talked about this a fair amount. But the work that he's doing with Matt, we're also doing at the elementary level. And this fall, we taught teachers how to use Intervention Compass to look at the performance of your classroom. You know, we as administrators use that more often. We look at cohorts. But I got an email from a parent a couple days ago saying, I'm wondering about this about my child. And I was able to jump into Intervention Compass and see tons of data about their kid, about how they're performing in math, how they're performing in reading, what they're doing on their chapter tests, how they did in the state assessments last year. And to have all that at my fingertips was something that in our previous systems were just incapable of. And so then I could talk to Matt and say, well, Matt, am I reading this correctly? Does this mean this? And walk through what this data means even at the kid level. It's powerful. And so teachers were trained this fall, and they're learning how to build data walls. One of the things that we're also talking about is encouraging a growth mindset. And this conversation for growth mindset in our SEP was actually born out of our data. It was eavesdropping on what was happening in the middle school and high school tables, and where they talk about, you know, some kids just don't have the stamina They don't keep trying, they don't have the persistence. And we said that, well, if they're gonna be successful, we actually need to plant that seed at the elementary level. And so we've had in-services talking about making sure when the kid says, I can't do that, we always reframe that to, well, maybe we can't do that today, but today we're gonna get 1 day smarter at this particular skill, and you're gonna get there. And we work 1 day smarter each day, and that's this growth mindset. And teachers are sharing resources about it. And with any new initiative as far as programming and way to think about things in more concentrated ways, we have some teachers who are like right out in front wanting to like hold the flag high on this. Other teachers wanted to pick up their materials that they already wrote and try them themselves. And those are both okay. But those are areas that we see as using data in different ways to really support our kids. As far as strengthening relationships and communication, we really felt it was important to relaunch morning meetings. And morning meetings are one of the key strategies of responsive classroom. And we've talked about that a lot over quite a while. A morning meeting is not a morning circle. It's not calendar time. It's an activity where we come in and the kids are all greeted. To Christy's point, kids are all important. They're all greeted by name and they learn each other's name. We do an activity together. The activity can be academic. It doesn't have to be just for fun. It can be academic, it can be social and emotional, but it's again to engage them in the joy of school. We have a message, and I model writing a message every day to the kids. I send it out, and a lot of teachers use my message that gets sent out daily, but a lot of teachers will also write their own messages as they talk to the kids about the important things that they're going to cover through their day. And there's a sharing. It's not just kids receiving information, it's kids getting to share back as well. And so we think that's really important, and we've said to teachers, we really expect you to do morning meetings 4 times a week. And so that's their goal. Now, a morning meeting, by the way, doesn't have to be morning. Like if you're a 5th grade teacher at the elementary school, your morning consists of kids walking in the door, quickly eating breakfast, and rushing to PE. Why? Because someone has to go to PE, and the 5th graders are the only ones who I can count on will be ready on time every day. So they do their morning meetings at other points of the day, and that's fine. But the important thing is they're spending time on community. We talked a lot about the work that Sierra is doing, and I could not be more grateful. At the elementary school, we've tried to take the bi-weekly cycle that we've talked about, and by creating a shift within that, if I have a bi-weekly schedule for communicating with parents and teachers have a bi-weekly schedule, we know parents are busy. So I time my letters on maybe the 1st and 3rd Fridays of the month, and teachers time theirs for the 2nd and 4th. And that way parents are not getting overrun with information on a given day, but there's always something coming to them about the exciting things happening at the elementary school. And that's worked really well. And this series has even created templates for teachers to use, and we've given teachers times to even collaborate on those. And it really has worked out pretty nicely. As far as our next steps, we are going to be continuing to dive deeper into the phonics work that we're doing. It matters tremendously. We want to use that data to adjust our grade level curriculum maps or our pacing guides. So when teachers sit down together, they say, at the beginning of the 3rd quarter, we should all be here. Who's not here, and what do you need to get to in order to catch up with us and make sure that all of our students, as they move on to a next grade, have been exposed to the same curriculum as their other peers in their cohort. And again, we want to continue to support those responsive classroom strategies. So, any questions on what I've shared?
You went back to printed cards, report cards.
So, thank you. So in our conversations, parents do not like digital only report cards. And I will confess, as a parent, I get it. I'll stop there. I get it. And if you don't print them out, they can become lost in the system, especially if you have a graduating child. And if you didn't print out a report card, that's gone. And so parents give us really great feedback. We have a lot of work to do on our report card at the elementary school, but the fact that at least they get it on paper is a big step forward, that they don't have to go looking for it. So yeah, we've got a paper report card. Technology is not my friend tonight. So the last slide is just if there's any other questions.
But I wanted to kind of pull this back together too. While you hear the updates from each building, and there's certainly differences at each level, what it looks like, hopefully you also heard some consistent themes that tie right back to the improvement plans as well as our district goals. So certainly themes around data. Yes, it looks a little different in each level, but there's a consistent effort to refine our practices around how we utilize data and what data we have available to our teachers. Communication and what that has looked like this year has been drastically different than in recent years just because of the dedicated person, and in case it hasn't been said already, the awesomeness that is Sierra, right? Her ability to multitask and get all these different pieces up and going and building off of where we were in the first year. So very much a theme of communication. And then also this theme, again, sounds a little different at each level, but understanding students that struggle with chronic absenteeism and what is that really about? What are the root causes and how do we support those students and address them? At the elementary school, this idea of growth mindset and making sure that students don't get stuck in a mindset, but how do we promote and support students to think a little differently? So understanding our students is kind of that other theme. So hopefully that came through tonight. This was meant as just an update at each level. By no means is it a comprehensive list of every single thing that has happened related to the improvement plans, but was meant as more of an overarching update of things that have happened so far this school year. So again, my last slide won't come up, but any other questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you, it's a lot of information, appreciate it. And thank you again for our light reading. Then I'm going to move us on to our action items. First one is 4.1, approve the personnel agenda. I need a motion to approve the personnel agenda.
Erica and Angela.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we need to approve. I need a motion to approve Hunter Smigel as a student Board of Ed member for the period of March 13th, 2023 through June 30th, 2023.
Jim and Dave.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Hunter. I need a motion to approve the corrected Rensselaerville Library resolution to be placed on the ballot for the annual vote and election on May 16th, 2023.
Eric and Dave, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, for open forum, this is the open closing forum. Same rules apply as before. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Do we have any emails?
No emails.
Okay. Then I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. That was
Eric
fast.
and Angela.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.